That person who makes you feel crazy, who you can't stop thinking about even though they hurt you, that's not love. That's trauma bonding. And it's literally rewiring your brain to crave dysfunction. Right now, as you're watching this, there's someone in your life who treats you terribly, yet you find yourself making excuses for them, hoping they'll change, unable to walk away, even though every rational part of your brain knows you should. You tell yourself it's because you love them. But what if I told you it's actually because you're addicted to them? Chemically, neurologically, spiritually addicted to the very person who's destroying your life. I'm about to share something with you that's going to sound impossible, but it's backed by neuroscience, and it explains why you keep attracting the same type of toxic people over and over again. Your brain has been programmed since childhood to associate love with pain, connection with chaos, and intimacy with intensity. And until you understand how this programming works, you'll keep choosing people who confirm your deepest wounds instead of healing them. 3 years ago, I found myself in a relationship where I was constantly walking on eggshells, constantly trying to prove my worth, constantly feeling like I was failing at being the person they needed me to be. But instead of recognizing this as dysfunction, instead of setting boundaries, I found myself trying harder to please them. I was addicted to those rare moments of approval, desperate for the relief that came when the tension finally broke. I thought this was love. I thought this was what commitment looked like. But what I was actually experiencing was trauma bonding, the same neurochemical addiction that keeps people trapped in abusive relationships for decades. If you've ever found yourself obsessing over someone who treats you poorly, if you've ever felt more attracted to people who are emotionally unavailable than those who are kind to you, if you've ever wondered why you keep ending up in the same toxic patterns, this video is going to change everything for you. Hit that subscribe button right now, like this video, and tell me in the comments below who is the person you know you should walk away from but can't. Because I read every single comment, and your honesty is the first step to breaking free. Let me explain what trauma bonding actually is, because most people think it's just staying in a bad relationship, but it's so much deeper and more insidious than that. Trauma bonding is a psychological phenomenon where you develop a strong emotional attachment to someone who hurts you through a cycle of abuse and intermittent reinforcement. It's not about love, it's about survival. Your nervous system becomes addicted to the neurochemical cocktail that gets released during the cycle of tension, explosion, and reconciliation. Here's how it works on a neurological level, and this is going to blow your mind. When someone you're attached to hurts you, your brain releases stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. These chemicals create a state of hypervigilance and anxiety. Then, when that same person shows you kindness or affection, your brain floods with dopamine, oxytocin, and endorphins, the same chemicals released during drug use. This creates a powerful neurochemical high that your brain starts to crave. But here's the twisted part: the relief you feel when the abuse stops is actually more intense than the pleasure you'd get from consistent kindness. It's like being in a dark room for hours and then having someone turn on a light for just a few seconds. That brief moment of light feels more intense than if you'd been in a normally lit room the whole time. Your brain becomes addicted to this cycle of pain and relief, tension and release, fear and temporary safety. This is why you can't just think your way out of trauma bonding. Your rational mind knows the relationship is toxic, but your nervous system is literally addicted to the neurochemical rollercoaster. You're not weak for staying, you're chemically dependent on a cycle that was programmed into you before you even understood what was happening. Now here's where it gets really dark. Trauma bonding doesn't start in your adult relationships, it starts in childhood. If you grew up in a family where love was conditional, where affection was unpredictable, where you had to walk on eggshells to avoid emotional explosions, your developing brain learned to associate love with anxiety, connection with chaos, and safety with hypervigilance. Let me tell you about the moment I realized my entire understanding of love was based on trauma bonding. I was 8 years old, And my father had been giving me the silent treatment for 3 days because I had asked for money to go out with friends and taken an extra £10 from his wallet. For 3 days, I felt like I was dying inside. The house was filled with this suffocating tension, and I knew it was my fault. Then, on the 4th day, he finally spoke to me. He didn't apologize. He didn't acknowledge that the silent treatment was cruel. He just acted like nothing had happened. And I felt this overwhelming rush of relief and gratitude. I was so happy that he was talking to me again that I forgot how much he had hurt me. That moment programmed my nervous system to believe that love comes after pain, that connection requires suffering, that relief is more valuable than consistency. And for the next 20 years, I unconsciously sought out relationships that would recreate that same cycle of tension and relief, abandonment and return, punishment and forgiveness. This is how trauma bonding becomes a generational pattern. Children who grow up with inconsistent, conditional love learn to equate intensity with intimacy. They learn that calm, stable relationships feel boring because their nervous systems are calibrated for chaos. They learn that people who are consistently kind must be weak or fake because their experience has taught them that real love involves struggle. The most dangerous aspect of trauma bonding is how it masquerades as passion. Society has romanticized the idea of love being painful, of relationships requiring struggle, of having to fight for someone's affection. We're told that if it doesn't hurt, it's not real love. Movies, songs, and stories celebrate the tortured romance, the on-again, off-again relationship, the love that conquers all obstacles. But what they're actually celebrating is trauma bonding, the addiction to neurochemical chaos that keeps people trapped in cycles of pain and relief. This cultural programming makes it even harder to recognize trauma bonding in your own life. When you're obsessing over someone who treats you poorly, when you're making excuses for their behavior, when you're convinced that your intense feelings must mean you're meant to be together, you're not experiencing true love. You're experiencing the same neurochemical addiction that keeps people hooked on gambling, drugs, or any other intermittent reinforcement schedule. The tragedy is that trauma bonding actually prevents you from experiencing real intimacy. When you're constantly in survival mode, when you're always scanning for threats, when you're addicted to the highs and lows of emotional chaos, you can't be present for genuine connection. You can't be vulnerable in a healthy way, because vulnerability in a trauma-bonded relationship is dangerous. You can't trust because trust requires consistency, and trauma bonding thrives on unpredictability. When you're trauma bonded to someone, you develop what psychologists call Stockholm Syndrome in relationships. You start to identify with your abuser's perspective. You make excuses for their behavior. You blame yourself for their reactions. You convince yourself that if you just try harder, if you just become better, if you just stop being so sensitive, they'll finally give you the love you're craving. But here's what you need to understand. The love you're craving from them isn't actually love. It's the neurochemical high of intermittent reinforcement. You're not in love with them. You're addicted to the cycle they provide. You're not fighting for your relationship. You're fighting for your next fix. Let me break down the cycle of trauma bonding so you can recognize it in your own life. The first stage is the tension building phase. You start to feel like you're walking on eggshells. The other person becomes moody, critical, or distant. You find yourself hypervigilant, trying to read their mood, trying to figure out what you did wrong, trying to prevent the inevitable explosion. Your nervous system is flooded with stress hormones, and you're in a constant state of fight or flight. The second stage is the incident phase. This is when the explosion happens. They rage at you, give you the silent treatment, threaten to leave, or emotionally attack you in some way. Your nervous system goes into survival mode. You might fight back, you might freeze, you might try to appease them, or you might dissociate completely. This is when the most damage is done to your psyche. The third stage is the reconciliation phase, and this is where the addiction gets reinforced. They apologize, they explain their behavior, They promise it won't happen again. They show you affection. They make you feel special. Your brain floods with relief chemicals, dopamine, oxytocin, endorphins. You feel closer to them than ever before. You think this is what love feels like. You think this intensity means you're soulmates. The fourth stage is the calm phase, where things seem normal for a while. But your nervous system never fully relaxes because it's learned that the calm is temporary. You're always unconsciously waiting for the next cycle to begin. And it always does, because trauma bonding requires the cycle to maintain the addiction. Here's what's truly insidious about trauma bonding. It doesn't just happen with romantic partners. You can be trauma bonded to parents, friends, bosses, even entire communities or belief systems. Any relationship where you experience intermittent reinforcement, where love and approval are conditional and unpredictable, where you have to earn your worth through performance or compliance, can create trauma bonding. I was trauma bonded to my father for 30 years. Every time he gave me the silent treatment, every time he exploded in rage, every time he made me feel small and worthless, I would desperately try to win back his approval. And when he finally showed me affection or pride, the relief was so intense that I would forget all the pain he had caused me. I was addicted to his validation because it was so rare and unpredictable. This is why you keep attracting the same type of people. Your nervous system is calibrated to recognize the neurochemical signature of trauma bonding and mistake it for love. When you meet someone who is consistently kind, emotionally available, and stable, your nervous system doesn't recognize them as a potential partner because they don't trigger the familiar cycle of anxiety and relief. You might find yourself thinking that stable people are boring, that healthy relationships lack passion, that you need drama to feel alive. But what you're actually experiencing is withdrawal from the neurochemical addiction to chaos. Your nervous system is so used to the highs and lows of trauma bonding that normal, healthy love feels flat by comparison. The most heartbreaking part of trauma bonding is how it robs you of your ability to receive genuine love. When someone offers you consistent kindness, when they show up reliably, when they don't make you guess where you stand with them, your nervous system doesn't know how to process it. You might find yourself creating drama to make the relationship feel more familiar. You might sabotage good relationships because they don't give you the neurochemical high you're addicted to. You might mistake their stability for lack of passion, their consistency for lack of interest. This is why healing from trauma bonding isn't just about leaving toxic relationships. It's about rewiring your entire nervous system to recognize and receive healthy love. It's about learning to tolerate peace instead of chaos, consistency instead of intensity, safety instead of survival. It's about developing the capacity to be bored in a relationship without creating drama to make it feel more alive. Breaking free from trauma bonding requires you to understand that what you think is love is actually a survival mechanism. You're not choosing these people because they're your soulmates. You're choosing them because they're familiar. They recreate the same neurochemical environment that your childhood programmed you to associate with connection. The first step in breaking trauma bonds is recognizing them. You have to become aware of the cycle, aware of how your nervous system responds to intermittent reinforcement, aware of how you mistake intensity for intimacy. You have to start questioning whether what you're feeling is actually love or just neurochemical addiction. The second step is understanding your attachment style. If you grew up with inconsistent caregiving, you likely developed what psychologists call anxious attachment. This means you crave closeness but fear abandonment. You're hypervigilant about your partner's moods, and you tend to lose yourself in relationships. People with anxious attachment are particularly susceptible to trauma bonding because their nervous systems are already calibrated for relationship anxiety. The third step is nervous system regulation. You have to learn to calm your nervous system without needing someone else to do it for you. This means developing practices like breathwork, meditation, somatic experiencing, and other techniques that help you self-soothe. When you can regulate your own nervous system, you're less likely to become addicted to the regulation that comes from trauma bonding cycles. The fourth step is reparenting yourself. You have to give yourself the consistent, unconditional love that you never received as a child. You have to learn to validate your own emotions, meet your own needs, and provide yourself with the safety and security that you're seeking from others. This is the hardest step because it requires you to become the parent you never had. The fifth step is setting boundaries. You have to learn to recognize when someone is trying to pull you into a trauma bonding cycle and refuse to participate. This means not engaging with manipulation, not trying to fix or save people, not accepting breadcrumbs of affection as proof of love. It means walking away from people who can't offer you consistent, healthy connection. The sixth step is learning to tolerate healthy love. When you meet someone who is emotionally available, consistent, and kind, your nervous system might rebel. You might feel bored. You might create drama. You might sabotage the relationship because it doesn't feel familiar. You have to consciously choose to stay in healthy relationships, even when they don't give you the neurochemical high you're used to. This process isn't easy. Breaking trauma bonds feels like withdrawal from a drug, because that's essentially what it is. You'll experience anxiety, depression, obsessive thoughts, and intense cravings for the person you're trying to leave. Your nervous system will try to convince you that you're making a mistake, that you'll never find love again, that you're being too picky or unrealistic. But here's what I want you to understand. The discomfort you feel when breaking trauma bonds is not a sign that you're making a mistake. It's a sign that you're healing. It's your nervous system recalibrating from chaos to peace, from intensity to stability, from addiction to authentic love. Real love doesn't hurt. Real love doesn't require you to walk on eggshells. Real love doesn't make you question your sanity or worth. Real love is consistent, safe, and nurturing. It doesn't create anxiety. It creates peace. It doesn't make you feel like you have to earn it. It's freely given. It doesn't require you to lose yourself. It helps you find yourself. The people who are meant to be in your life will not require you to trauma bond with them to maintain connection. They will not use intermittent reinforcement to keep you hooked. They will not make you feel crazy or desperate or addicted to their approval. They will offer you the steady, consistent love that allows your nervous system to finally relax and your authentic self to emerge. In my next video, we're going deeper into something that specifically affects those of us who've been through this programming, the masculine wound. I'm going to show you how narcissistic abuse doesn't just damage your ability to love, it systematically destroys your connection to your authentic masculine power. We're going to explore how to reclaim your inner king after years of being trained to be the compliant prince. But for now, I want you to start examining your relationships through this new lens. Start noticing when you're being pulled into trauma bonding cycles. Start questioning whether what you're feeling is love or addiction. Start recognizing that the intensity you crave might actually be the very thing that's keeping you trapped. Your nervous system can be retrained. Your attachment style can be healed. Your capacity for healthy love can be restored. But it starts with seeing the truth about what trauma bonding really is: not love, but survival. And once you see it, you can never unsee it. And that's when you can finally choose something different.